Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where I cap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 26th of November 2025. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I'm back from Devconnect. That was a long week, actually. I always kind of hate going to that time zone, so like the American kind of time zone, because of the fact that the jet lag is brutal. The flight there isn't that long. I think it took me 16 hours to get to Buenos Aires, but the time zone difference is like, I think it was 17 hours or something like that, which is insane. And by the time I had gotten over the jet lag, I came home. So I basically spent a week there, and then I came home. I got home Monday morning here, and now it's Wednesday, and I'm still jet lagged. So I'm hoping I can get this kind of refuel done before I collapse, because typically I'm recording this in the afternoon, and typically in the afternoon I'm kind of like fading from the jet lag there. But Devconnect was extremely fun. I think it was really energizing for me personally, and for a lot of other people out there, to see, I guess, like the new EF in action. I've been talking about this obviously for a while, and we've seen kind of the new EF in action online since the beginning of the year, but to see it in person and to see the EF be much more visible, I guess, was really refreshing. And for me personally, it was great to meet our, new faces that had been listening to the Daily Gwei or had been part of the Daily Gwei community for quite a while now, but also see old faces as well, because as you guys probably aware, I've mentioned this before, I only go to one conference a year now, and that's DevCon or Devconnect. And DevCon, actually, I had this tweet here, which I just talked to now. DevCon 8 is going to be in Mumbai next year in India, which is pretty cool because I've never been to India myself, and this gives me an excuse to go there. And that's what I love about these conferences. It gives me an excuse to go to places that I haven't been to before. And I know there was a bit of drama, as there always is, about what location the EF picked for DevCon 8 here, and people saying, why can't there be a DevCon in the US? Look, I've been through this before. The number one reason, and this isn't just like an excuse, but the number one reason is because it's really hard for people outside of the US to get visas to come into the US. And I think that anyone who, lives in the US obviously doesn't feel this, because you don't need a visa to go into the US. But and if you're a US citizen, getting a visa to go to other countries is relatively easy. But if you're a citizen of majority of other countries, getting a visa to get into the US is really, really hard. So the EF has always prioritized hosting DevCons in both kind of like, I guess, exotic locations, but also locations where it's easy to get a visa. And for me personally, I would much rather them keep doing that, because I have no interest in having like a DevCon or a Devconnect being like a kind of westernized nation, right? Like for me, it's kind of this thing of, I live in Australia, I'm already in kind of a Western country. Everyone speaks English. Like if I go to America, it doesn't feel that different. I'm just like, okay, well, everyone speaks English, right? Like, it's very westernized, so it's very similar to what it is like in Australia. Same with, not everywhere in Europe, but like a lot of parts in Europe. So like the UK, for example. So yeah, I personally would love to see them continue to do DevCon and DevConnects in these different locations. And there is already plenty of conferences in the US, guys. Like I know, obviously DevCon is the biggest Ethereum conference, but there's already like ETH Denver, which I guess is more like Crypto Denver these days. It's not just focused on Ethereum, but it's called ETH Denver. There's still a lot of Ethereum kind of presence there. A lot of people go to that one. There's ETH Global that's going to be held in New York this year. Apparently they're expecting 8,000 attendees, which is huge, right? Like that's bigger than most of the other conferences out there. I know Etherealize is doing a lot of great work in New York as well. And there's just so much kind of Ethereum presence in the US already, especially with the new EF. They're actually spinning up things there. So I don't think we need a DevCon or DevConnect there. Maybe there will be one there eventually, but I think it's much kind of, much more kind of plus EV, as they say, to have these conferences outside of the US. At least that's my personal view here. Maybe that's a biased view because I am already, like, I live in a westernized kind of nation, and I would rather be able to go to like places that I maybe otherwise wouldn't travel to, that are very different to where I live, because that's what I enjoy when traveling. Honestly, like, for me, my favorite places that I've ever traveled to in the world are places that feel nothing like home. And I guess that's a big reason why I like Japan. Japan to me is a massive culture shock. The first time I went there in 2019, it was a huge culture shock, and that was for DevCon, Osaka. But it was a culture shock because like barely anyone spoke English. There's so many different kind of cultural differences with Japan as opposed to Australia, for example, or any other kind of like westernized nation. And also they, I guess like because of their policies around immigration. They don't really have much immigration going on. Their culture has maintained kind of like a monoculture rather than a diverse culture. There's nothing wrong with diverse cultures, but for me, it was just really, I guess, like cool to see such a different culture and kind of get a shock like that. And the same is true for other places that I've been kind of around the world, but I think Japan was like definitely the one that struck me the most, and I'm sure India is going to be as well. Like India, even though Mumbai is probably the most popular city in India, and maybe the closest you could say to like the most western part, I guess, like in terms of like the culture there. From what I've heard from other people, it's still very different, right? It's still very unique, and I am personally looking forward to going there and seeing kind of what it's all about. But yeah, as per usual, there's always drama around everything. Like some people just love to complain, and I think, if you complain on Twitter, you seem to get the most attention. So I don't know, I would ignore those, as I usually say. Ignore those people. You don't need to kind of give them attention there, but I figured it was worth giving my take on what I kind of see with regards to these conferences here. But yeah, anyway, as I said, lots of fun at Devconnect. It was really energizing. The favorite part for me was, I guess, just seeing all of the kind of Ethereum core protocol related talks, not just at Devconnect, but at like the Bankless Summit, for example, seeing the fact that we're on this kind of really nice path right now towards L1 scaling, which I'm going to talk about in today's episode as well. And we've never been in a better position, I think. I think the EF is firing on all cylinders. I think that in terms of the speed at which we're upgrading the network and scaling the L1, it's just getting faster and faster, and there are a lot of there's a lot of focus on real world kind of Ethereum now and real world assets and obviously stable coins and bringing that on board. But also DeFi continues to grow. It's just, for me, like the main theme was that everything's growing on Ethereum in a really nice way. And Ethereum is is the most well positioned it's ever been in order to keep scaling up the network. I mean, we have Fusaka going live in less than 10 days, less than 9 days now or something like that on December 3rd, which brings with it obviously a massive scalability increase to blobs with PeerDAS, and also the gas limit going to 60 million, which it is right now. I think it's at 55 million right now, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit here. But yeah, obviously Fusaka brings with it a bunch of other upgrades as well, which you can go to forkcast.org to view all of that. But PeerDAS is the biggest one, which again I'm going to talk about in a bit with regards to blobs here. But yeah, that's two major upgrades this year, guys. Two major network upgrades that we've kind of put forward this year, Pectra and Fusaka. Now next year, obviously we have Glamsterdam. I think that's going to be the only one that goes live next year. I highly doubt we're going to get two forks next year because Glamsterdam alone is a pretty big fork. And I think that if I was to say when that would go live, late Q2 into Q3 is my kind of estimate here, but it's too early to tell still. That's just like a very rough estimate. So if it does go live in Q3, even late Q2, there's just no chance that we're going to get the next fork, which is the H star fork happening next year, which is okay because we actually have other things happening, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. I don't want to spoil too much of it at the start here. So yeah, I think it's okay there. Now, before I get into the news from the last couple of weeks here, I did want to announce something with regards to the Daily Gwei. So I announced this in the Discord channel a couple of days ago. So for those of you who are in there, you got the alpha first. But today I announced on Twitter that the Daily Gwei Refuel is going to be going back to a regular cadence starting in 2026. So today will actually be, I think this episode will be the last episode of the year. So I will not be doing another episode until 2026. I'm going to take a break during the Christmas holiday period there because I definitely need one. And I think it's always healthy, obviously, to take breaks here. But starting on January 5th in 2026, which is a Monday, I'm going to be doing weekly episodes of the Refuel. So that's the cadence that I'll be doing every Monday, probably morning, I guess like EST time or EDT time. There's going to be a new episode. Now, I chose Monday because obviously it's the start of the week, but also I didn't want to, I guess, release an episode on the same day as the weekly roll-up that Bankless does, which happens on a Friday. So I think, you got Friday for the roll-up, you got Monday for the Refuel, and I do believe there's a lot of overlap between the two shows, so I didn't, as I said, want to cannibalize the roll-up, or at least kind of like share the spotlight with the roll-up there. I think it's great to have one on a Friday and a Monday, and of course there's lots of other podcasts, but I don't think, most of them are as Ethereum-focused as Bankless and the Daily Gwei is. But yeah, I mean, the reason I'm doing this, as you guys have, I guess like the people who have listened to me this year, I was like super burnt out. I stopped doing daily episodes. I went to like every other day, and then it just became whenever I kind of felt like it. But since getting my, I guess like health in check, since getting a lot of other things in my life in check, I feel a million times better than I did at the start of the year. It's honestly been a pretty transformative year for me personally. For those of you who had followed along with my fitness journey, you'll know, and I spoke about that on the last refuel. But there's also other things that I've kind of, I guess, like changed in my life in order to give me, I guess, the structure I needed and to kind of fix a lot of the problems that I was suffering from with regards to, I guess, like my mental health, especially, and burnout that I was constantly experiencing here. And just a teaser, I'm going to go through this at the end of the episode, but I'm actually going to reveal what my secret project is. A lot of you have tried to guess what it is. None of you have gotten close, but I've actually revealed it during Devconnect to people who asked. So I figured, well, it was going to come out sooner or later, so I may as well reveal it myself. That'll be at the end of the episode, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, all of that has kind of culminated in me feeling like that now it's time to get back to a regular schedule for the refuel. And I'm confident that I can maintain a weekly schedule. That's pretty straightforward for me. The episodes will obviously be longer. They won't just be 30-minute episodes. I'm thinking an hour minimum, because I'll be covering a week's worth of news and everything that's happening during that week. So yeah, an hour minimum. And if I go longer, I go longer. I'm not sticking to any kind of strict schedule with regards to time. And also there may be weeks where I do more than one episode. Maybe there's something that I feel like I need to talk about, or maybe I just feel like doing more than one. So really one a week is kind of like the regular cadence and the minimum that I'm aiming for, but there may be more than that. And yeah, I mean, like as I've said before, it's likely never going to be daily again, but I think if I can stick to one a week, that's better than what I'm doing now, which seems to be one like every 3 weeks or something like that. And as I said, I'm not forcing myself to do this. I'm just in a really good position where I think that I can do this going forward. I've, I guess, like changed my relationship with crypto over the last year so that I'm in a much better position to essentially focus on what matters, ignore a lot of the noise, and I think 2026 is just going to be a massive year for Ethereum, so I really want to be part of that. I really want to be covering that, and I really want to keep the education up, because I think that when the Daily Gwei isn't frequent, education levels go down. There just isn't really anyone else doing what I do, especially doing it for free, and I kind of feel a duty to keep my to keep a regular cadence up so that people aren't being fudded by, I guess, like randoms on crypto Twitter, or aren't kind of like losing faith in Ethereum because they're believing all the crap that's being spread about it. So I want to be that counterbalance. That's always been one of the major points of the show. So I'm super excited to announce that today to all of you, that I'll be going back to a regular cadence starting on the 5th of January. But as I said, today's episode of The Refuel will be the last one of the year, but I'll finish off the episode later and talk a little bit about that there. Now that's all the logistics out of the way. Let's get into the updates. So as I mentioned earlier, the Ethereum L1 gas limit is going to 60 million today, basically. So I shared this screenshot on Twitter earlier. It was creeping up. This was from the Etherscan Block Explorer page, or the block page where it shows you the blocks and the gas limit. It was at 50 million-ish, and I actually saw this creeping up last night. So as you guys know, we started at 45 million. People have been changing their gas limits or updating to the Fusaka clients, which have a 60 million gas limit here. And you can see just today on gaslimit.pix, we reached over 50% basically. So that means the gas limit is going to 60 million. It slowly goes up until we reach 60 million, but we're getting there pretty much today. Because last I checked on Etherscan, it was 55 million. That was an hour ago. So we'll be at 60 million in the next few hours. And that will represent a 100% total increase in the gas limit this year, guys. So from 30 million to 60 million this year, we went 36 to 45, and now 45 to 60 million, which is also the biggest increase that we've seen, because the other two increases were 6 million and 9 million respectively. Now I've done a 15 million increase. So definitely a bigger one there. Now, of course, as some of you know, the target for next year and every year going forward, at least for the next 3 years, I would say, the target is to increase by 3 times per year. So go from 60 million to 180 million next year. And I think from what I've seen, the target is actually in Q1 to get this to 120 million. So to double it again in Q1. And then if we can get to 180 million, that will be a 3x from 60 million. So that's kind of the goal here. And then the year after that, we want to do a 3x again, which would get us to 540 million. And then after that, I think we may not do a 3x the following year, because as we get closer to gigagas, we do need ZK VMs, and that's being worked on as well, which I'm going to talk about. But hey guys, we're scaling. We're scaling the L1. It's 60 million before Fusaka goes live, and then with Fusaka going live, we're going to have the PeerDAS come along with Blob increases. So we're scaling across both layer 1 and layer 2 here. And I think that, given that we keep scaling L1, fees have stayed relatively low here, which is really great to see. Gwei right now, according to the extension I have here, the block native extension is 0.15, the base fee. So it's quite low, guys. And it's great because the more we increase the gas limit, the lower that is likely to go. And then, we expect demand to kind of pick back up again, but it's kind of this balancing act of, we increase the gas limit, demand comes in, maybe pushes the base fee up again, and then we kind of increase the gas limit. We reach capacity, push base fee up again, so on and so forth. That's the whole point of scaling, right? Is to give more capacity for more transactions across the network. So yeah, we're going to 60 million by the time you watch this episode, we'll already be at 60 million because I'm recording this 8 hours before I publish it or something like that. So yeah, we'll already be at 60 million there. But speaking of scaling as well, as I mentioned, in PeerDAS, we're going to have, in Fusaka, we're going to have PeerDAS, which is going to allow us to increase blobs even more than what they currently are. So current blob target is 6 blobs per block with a max of 9. Now, we're basically at that target. As you can see from this chart from Hill Dobby's Blob dashboard, you can see the average is 5.7 and the blobs average over the last 3 days is 5.5. So we're almost at capacity at 6 here. And I would say we're pretty much at capacity. Now, and some of you may not be aware of this, but the blob increase is not going live with Fusaka straight away. So what's happening in Fusaka is we're introducing something called blob parameter only forks, or BPO forks. And I've discussed this on the refuel before, but essentially what this is that there's going to be in kind of the Fusaka client release, there is the EIP, the blob parameter only forks, and there's a Unix timestamp in there that says, okay, once we reach this time on the network, we're going to increase the blob throughput. Now, the first 2 of these are happening very quickly after Fusaka. So the first one is happening on December 9th, which will increase the blob target from 6 to 10. So almost a doubling there, and that will happen a week after Fusaka goes live. And then a month after that, on January 7th, we will once again increase the blob target from 10 to 14. And then after that, I don't think any BPO porks have been scheduled yet, but I'm assuming that if everything goes well, if the network is stable and we're not seeing, huge participation drop-offs or anything like that in terms of validators on the network, then we're going to keep increasing the blobs here. Now, in terms of the theoretical limit of PeerDAS, I've seen different numbers thrown around, and it's good to keep in mind this is just the first version of PeerDAS, which is called one-dimensional PeerDAS. So there's going to be other ones that are coming. Not sure on timelines there, but yeah, from what I've seen and what I've read, the theoretical blob target limit can be up to 72 blobs per block, which is a pretty substantial increase from here. But again, with these BPO forks, the whole reason to do them like this and the whole reason not to go straight to 72 blobs per block is because of the fact that, if we were to go to 72 straight away, it's likely that a lot of the network would fall off because they just don't have the capacity to essentially, run the network with that many blobs on it. And that's not to say that they would fall over immediately, because I doubt that we would fill up that blob space immediately. But, obviously as the demand increases, as more blobs is posted, then yeah, we would start to see kind of participation rates fall off there. And that also goes into the whole discussion around what should be the minimum hardware requirements and the minimum bandwidth requirements for node operators on the network. And then there's discussions that fall off of that about splitting up roles, and that's part of obviously the wider lean Ethereum roadmap, but also splitting off roles with regards to what a supernode could look like on the network, where it won't, I guess, compromise on Ethereum's decentralization, but there'll be certain actors on the network that run more beefy hardware, like provers, for example. I'm going to talk about the ZK proving stuff soon as well. But yeah, so it's basically splitting this out so that we can still keep those lower powered devices on the network, but more so, I guess, those, bandwidth constrained node operators on the network. Because, and this was a big discussion actually in Devconnect that I had with a lot of people, and I've talked about it a lot on the refuel before, but you can't buy more bandwidth if it's not available to you in certain places around the world, right? But you can buy pretty much any hardware you want, pretty much anywhere in the world. And so when you look at it from that lens, if you say require 100 megabits per second upload bandwidth for a full node, so I guess like a full validator that processes everything. Well, there's a lot of places around the world that doesn't have that. I only recently got upgraded to that, but I can't go higher than that. If I want to upgrade more than that, so my internet connection at home is HFC, so it's hybrid fiber coaxial, which basically means I have fiber to the street and then coaxial into my home, which severely limits my upload bandwidth. So I have 2 gigabits down, but only 100 megabits up. So if I wanted to go to full fiber, I actually looked this up. It would cost me $20,000 to do so. That's Australian dollars. And it would also take a long period of time, undetermined period of time. I've heard estimates of 6 to 9 months from when you actually agree to it. But yeah, that's a huge kind of outlay for, I'm not going to earn that back in rewards anytime soon, right? Like, in terms of additional rewards on things, and it would really just be kind of me doing it out of an altruistic endeavor. Now, I may end up doing it because I really want full fiber, but at the same time, like it's a big cost, right? And that's like me who can afford it. Like, there's plenty of people out there who cannot afford that. That's a ridiculous amount of money, and also they may not even have that option. So they literally, doesn't matter how much money they have, they may not be able to get better internet. So they have to move in order to get better internet, which obviously is not an option for the vast majority of people. Whereas when it comes to hardware, I can buy the highest end hardware available in the world. Like, I have no issue buying hardware, but bandwidth is a completely different story. So the main conversation is always around bandwidth. And I think when it comes to hardware requirements, the general consensus from what I've seen is that we are okay with kicking off Raspberry Pis from the network at this point in time, because it's 2025. Everyone has like a NUC, or you can get a NUC, which is a very cheap kind of piece of hardware to get, and you can run a validator or many validators on there and run full nodes on there, no issues. And it's fun to have like a Raspberry Pi as a full node on the network, or a Rock 5B, which I still have. But my Rock 5B, its efficiency has been going down. It's at like 94% now because of the fact that we increased the Blob since Pectra. There's more load on the network with the gas limit going up. So my little device is not doing great, right? Like, 94%, it's going to go lower than that with Fusaka going live once these BPO forks happen. So I'm expecting to have to, like, obviously sunset that as a kind of like node operator there for, I guess, like a time being, because as I guess some of you know, the long-term goal here is to split out all of these roles when you're a node operator. So split out the attestation kind of role of a validator into its own thing, so that if you're just attesting to blocks or to slots, essentially what happens is that you can run that on very low powered devices. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have super high powered devices that are provers on the network. So they verify the ZK proofs, and that is kind of like the heaviness of the network here. But doing it like that means we don't lose this decentralization, and we keep solo stakers, we keep home validators, home full node operators on the network, and we keep them on the network with low-powered devices as well, which is obviously really cool there. So a lot of moving parts here to all of this. Obviously, when it comes to scaling Ethereum, it is a multi-dimensional thing. It's not just brute forcing it by throwing lots of hardware at it, and that's why it's so interesting, and that's why I guess like I love Ethereum, is because of the fact that we're not giving up what makes Ethereum great in order to scale the network. But yeah, there are some kind of conversations around that, and around keeping, are we going to keep Raspberry Pis on the network? Are we going to keep these other low-powered devices on the network? I'm personally okay with kicking these devices off, because honestly, if you do have enough to be a node operator on the network, enough ETH, then like I guess like a full kind of node operator, maybe not something that's like I guess squad staking or rocket pool, mini pool. But if you are a full kind of home staker, you have 32 ETH, you probably have the money in order to buy some better hardware, or you've got better hardware lying around that you can repurpose. But bandwidth, whole nother story. That's something else that's being worked on in very different ways, and there's many stuff, many different things happening across the full stack there, from client optimizations to, I guess, like splitting out the roles of validators and of node operators in order to further scale the network while not sacrificing decentralization there. So on that note as well, with regards to scale, there is an EIP that I didn't highlight yet. I don't think I've highlighted this ever on the Refuel before, but I should have, because I recently became a co-author of this EIP. So this is EIP 2780. Now, this is an old EIP, as you can tell by the number. It's actually quite old here. It was first proposed created in 2020. So yeah, very old. Like I think this is November 2020 here. I think if I'm reading the date correctly, or it's July 2020. Either way, it's quite old. 5 years old here. So if you look at from that perspective, it's a wonder that it's taken this long to go into the network, but I think it's because of that kind of reprioritization that I'm talking about, because this is an EIP that scales the L1 technically. So what this EIP does is that it's going to lower the base cost of a bunch of different transfers on the network for both ETH and tokens from kind of like my understanding here. But what gets me excited about this EIP is that it's lowering the base ETH transfer cost from 21,000 gas down to 6,000 gas. So for those of you who don't know how this works, when we talk about like the gas limit on Ethereum L1, we're talking about like how much kind of gas, which is the resource that we use to meter Ethereum blocks, how much kind of gas can be used or utilized in a block. So, at the beginning of the year, it was 30 million gas. Now it's 60 million gas. So we can fit like double the amount of gas into a block. But every transaction type or like kind of opcode on the network has different gas costs associated with it. So for a basic ETH transfer, it's currently set to 21,000 gas. So if you were to divide that 60 kind of that 60 million by 21,000 gas, and let's say the only transactions happening on the network were ETH transfers, then you could say that Ethereum could do like hundreds of TPS, right? If you do the kind of division there. But as we know, the Ethereum network is used for much more than basic ETH transfers, token transfers, DeFi operations, all that sorts of stuff, which are generally heavier as well. Like DeFi transactions can take, sometimes they can do like millions of gas if you're doing a lot, if you're doing like what's called a complex transaction. But if we're talking about just like basic ETH transfers here, lowering this is a good thing for a number of different reasons. I think the number one reason, and I think this is why I became a co-author on this EIP, because I should mention that like Ben Adams, a Daily Gwei regular, who's also the champion of this EIP, is the one that added me as a co-author here. And it's because he said that I informed a lot of his thinking around this EIP and why he wanted to be a champion for it. And that was because I've been saying on the Refuel for a while that ETH as an asset should be a first-class citizen on the Ethereum network, and the cost for transferring ETH was too high. I believe this for a long time now. 21,000 gas may not seem like much, but it's too high for a basic ETH transfer. Like ETH is the only decentralized asset on Ethereum and will always be that, and obviously is the best asset on Ethereum. So we should make it the best asset on Ethereum by lowering the cost to transfer it. So lowering this cost from 21,000 to 6,000 is a 71.4% cost reduction. So that's a pretty substantial cost reduction here, guys. But it's not just ETH that's being reduced here. Now, Ben actually explained this in the Daily Gwei Discord channel. So he said, the beauty of it is that this doesn't specifically target ETH, but it just reduces the base cost of all transactions. But since the base cost is 100% of an ETH transfer, it in effect improves ETH much more than any other ERC20. So essentially what happens is that ERC20 transfers are also going to get cheaper, but because as kind of like I said here, or because as Ben said here, because 100% of the cost of an ETH transfer is that base transfer cost or that base cost, then ETH is going to benefit the most here. So he put two more points here about the justification for this. He said it improves the moneyness of ETH versus other tokens, and that's another thing I've spoken about on the Refuel. The goal being that people think of ETH for payments for low ticket items rather than just high ticket items like NFTs. And if you are transferring ETH, half of the transaction is already being done via charging for gas, and the other half to an externally owned account doesn't invoke the EVM or load contract, so it's much lighter. So if you do create an account, there is currently an anomaly where if you do it via a call, you get charged 26,000 gas. If you do it by transaction, you don't get charged anything. So this corrects that anomaly, bringing down the base cost and charges if you create. So essentially, like kind of playing, I guess like this used to be called gas golfing, which is essentially kind of trying to optimize your gas usage here. And that was in the context of using the network. But this is kind of like gas golfing for changing the actual costs in protocol. Now, as far as I know, this EIP is going to be going into Glamsterdam. It doesn't seem to be controversial at all. It is a scalability increase. While also not overloading the network, because it's basically, as I said, like doing this kind of gas golfing thing here. So essentially shuffling around things here, which is great to see. But yeah, I mean, this is the first EIP that I'm a co-author on. And if it does make it into Glamsterdam, which I think it will, it technically makes me a core developer. So a huge shout out to Ben Adams for doing this here. I actually originally kind of hesitated. I'm just like to him, I'm like, oh, if you feel like you should add me to it, then that's cool. But then he kind of justified it to me. He's like, you a lot of the kind of like thinking a lot of the reason he went and became a champion for this old EIP now is because a lot of the stuff I said on the refuel. So that's cool that core devs are being influenced by kind of what I say on here. And just for context, Ben works on Nethermind. And as I said, he's a very active member of the Daily Gwei Discord community. He's always there. He's great to chat to. I saw him in Devconnect. It's always great catching up with him there. But come Glamsterdam, I'll be a core developer, which is great because it's funny. I used to do ETHUB with Eric Connor. You guys will remember, and Eric became a co-author of EIP 1559, the gas burning EIP. So technically, he's a core developer. So I always felt a little bit left out on that. I was like, oh, okay, he's a core developer. Maybe I can become a core developer one day. I never really tried to because obviously, I'm not. But technically, getting an EIP into the network and having your name as being kind of a co-author there makes you a core developer on some kind of level. So I'm pretty happy about that. That's pretty cool. So yeah. But regardless of that, regardless of my personal involvement in this, just having this go in is a huge unlock, guys. Making ETH transfers super cheap on the network is great. And obviously, by the time that we even get this EIP into the network as part of Glamsterdam, we should actually be at 120 million gas limit by that point. So we've scaled even more by that point, right? So yeah, anyway, you can go check out this EIP for yourself if you want more information about this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so there. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, the main theme, I would say, of Devconnect, or at least one of the main themes, was L1 scaling, and in particular, scaling via ZK. Now, obviously, ZK is much more than just the L1. It applies to L2s, it applies to privacy, right? It's much more than just L1 scaling here. But the reason why it's such a big deal is because the amount of progress being made on ZK is staggering, guys. It's absolutely crazy. And just to give you some context here. So Justin Drake tweeted this out, 5 days ago, where he said two 5090s, so NVIDIA GPUs, 5090s, now prove every L1 EVM block. Okay. So let me contextualize why this is insane. And this is being done by the ZK Sync Airbender team, by the way. So just awesome to see an L2 team doing this here. And they've been around for a while. I love ZK Sync. Should disclose that I'm an investor in them as well. But I want to kind of contextualize why this is insane. So go back a year. We were at, I think, 64 or 128 GPU clusters. So you would need 64, I think at the time was 4090s, or 128 4090s to prove every L1 EVM block, right? That's a ridiculous amount of GPUs. No home consumer, no regular person has that many GPUs. If you do have that many, you're obviously setting up an operation, whether I guess it was mining back in the day when Ethereum was proof of work, or obviously as a provey here, or you're just a team trying to test out your software by doing this. Now, fast forward to today, you have just two 5090s, which is very accessible to consumers. Yes, they're expensive GPUs, right? But they're still very accessible to consumers to prove every L1 EVM block. And I think even 3 months ago, it was much more than that. It was 24 GPUs or something crazy like that. So yeah, fast forward to now, we're at two, guys. Two. That's insane. That's actually insane. I actually can't describe how insane that is. I've given you the context, but going from a year ago, 128 down to 2 today, and then thinking, okay, what is this going to look like in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Are we going to get to the point where we can do this on lower powered GPUs, so not 5090s, maybe a 5070 or a 5060, and only one? That makes it purely consumer. And the reason why this is needed, and the reason why we wanted to bring down proving costs and proving time, not only so that we can prove every L1 EVM block, because as you guys know, an L1 EVM slot is 12 seconds, so you need to be able to do it in 12 seconds or less, which is what's happening here. But also we want to reduce slot time, so we need to get that down to 8 seconds or less, and eventually 6 and 4 seconds or less, which I think will happen. But getting the cost down to the point where a regular home consumer or home verifier can do this on their own hardware is really important to decentralization and liveness of proving, because proving is a one of n trust assumption. Essentially, it's the same as an L2 with a sequencer, right? You only need one honest party to publish these things and you're good. But with that comes the caveat of liveness and decentralization and obviously censorship resistance being weaker. So if you only had like one prover, for example, just one prover on the entire network submitting the proofs, then that's not very decentralized. Even though it's a one-of-n trust assumption, they can't really do anything malicious, it's still not very decentralized. And it also sucks for liveness, because what happens when this prover goes offline? Well, then they're not proving any blocks, the stuff starts breaking, right? So we want to bring that cost down as much as possible so that we can have tens, hundreds, thousands potentially of provers across the network, so that the liveness becomes just as strong as it is today with the node operator set that we have. Now, of course, with that comes better censorship resistance as well, because there probably is some way to kind of censor, not just by not doing the I guess like the proof, but also potentially by censoring in a proof. I'm not an expert on this, so there may not be a way to do this, but I think there is. Maybe if you kind of like partner up with a builder or something, like there are definite risks here, but I think liveness is the biggest one, of course. So even if you had only like tens of people doing this, that's probably good enough. But to get to that point, you would definitely want tens of people doing this on consumer grade hardware, right? Instead of really high powered hardware. So we've gotten to that point. Like I would say, as I said, like two 5090 GPUs is already at that point. We're going to get to one, then we're going to get to weaker GPUs than that. 5090 is obviously the highest end right now. And then we're going to get even weaker than that. And it's actually good as well from, I guess, the lens of the fact that, as you guys know, currently hardware is like extremely expensive, especially like RAM, for example, because of AI. So we're competing with AI here. But at the same time, we're only competing with AI insofar as we, as kind of it's relatively expensive today. But with the progress that we're making here, it's going to become just so much more cheaper, right? So yeah, it's just crazy. And you can actually keep track of all of this on ethproofs.org. So you can go to this website, which has all of the, I guess, like metrics around this, all of the provers, because it's not just like the ZK Sync Airbender team. There are actually plenty of other teams working on this, and you can actually go to the teams page and see. There's tons of teams, right? There's like ZK Cloud, there's Zisk, Matter Labs, which is the ZK Sync one, Axiom, Brevis, Zilkworm, Succinct, so on and so forth. But you can see here that like the average proving time for most of them is still above 12 seconds, but that's going to come down. ZK Cloud seems to be the current leader with average proving time of 9.6 seconds and a cost per proof of 0.08 cents. That's quite cheap, but obviously if you consider that we have like a lot of blocks per day, I actually don't know how many blocks we have, slots per day we have. It's like in the thousands somewhere, but if I was to do like a quick kind of quick math on this. So we have 5 slots per minute, and then we have, I'm just doing the math here on this because it's I want to work this out so I can give you a good good estimate here. So I think if I've done my math correctly, we have 7,200 slots per day. So if we times that by 0.08, it would cost $576 per day to prove all of the blocks. So obviously, like, if you're a prover, that's still very expensive. And that's why I said before, it's not just the proving times, it's also getting the cost down per proof. And there's various different ways to do this. It's all very complex, cryptography, stuff that I don't understand if you were to like dive deeper into it. But from a high level, I understand that obviously cost is a big thing here. And you can actually see that like ZK Cloud's actually one of the more expensive ones. Matter Labs has got this cost down to, basically a half a cent. And that brings it down to only $30 a day. But the average proving time is still 13.7 seconds, so it's not 12 seconds yet. And also the average proving time, so this is actually the main issue with this sort of stuff, is that the average proving time is fine, but like you need every single L1 EVM block to be proved within 12 seconds or less. And I guess like you're never going to get 100% coverage, but you want like 99.9% coverage because of the fact that if it's at like, say you're able to prove only 90% of them in 12 seconds or less, that means that you're going to miss 10% of blocks per day or 10% of slots per day. So you need that to be 99% under 12 seconds. And then if you miss a couple, it's not a big deal, obviously. Like missing 1% per day, I mean, that's still a pretty big deal. So, but like, it's not as big a deal as 10%. And then we can get that down even further here. But if you want to keep track of all of that, you can on this website, which I'll link in the YouTube description for you to check out below. But as I said, guys, like most of this, I guess like most of these improvements have happened really in the last kind of, I would say 6 months, honestly. Like you can see on the chart here, the latency has just dropped off a cliff. Like this was in October. At the end of October, the I guess average proving time was like 5 minutes. Now, today, it's 13.3 seconds. Like, that's like a month, right? Like, that's a month. Like, just think what this is going to be like in another month or another 3 months or another 6 months. We're going to get those costs down to negligible. We're going to get those times down to 12 seconds or less for 99.9% of blocks here, of slots here. And this will be like a long time before we actually get this on the network, right? Live on the network, because there is actually multiple ways of doing this. Justin Drake showed a demo at the ETH Proofs Day of doing this on mainnet, basically submitting a proof without relying on execution layer clients, so just to the consensus layer clients, but to actually become part of the core protocol and to do like the Enshrine ZKVM and things like that. That's a longer term thing. So by that point, when we get to that point, this stuff is going to be so incredibly cheap, so incredibly fast to prove, and doing it on like the cheapest, maybe some of the cheapest consumer hardware that you can get, that Ethereum is going to scale so massively, we won't even know what hit Ethereum. And that's actually another thing that I haven't even discussed yet, but like what this is actually like, what does this do in practice for the network? Guys, like I was talking earlier about a 60 million gas limit and then 3xing that to 180 million. That's fine, like that's cool. And then 3xing that again to 540 million. Sure, huge improvements there, like massive improvements, right? Like if we say we started at 30 million and then in like 2 years we're at 540 million, that's an almost 20x increase there. But like where we're going much further than that. Justin Drake reckons we can get to a gigagas per second, okay? That's not a gigagas. That's not like I guess like a 1 billion gas limit on for a 12-second slot. That's per second. So if I'm understanding this correctly, and if Justin Drake gets what he wants, he's always very aggressive about this, 1 gigagas per second would translate to a 12 billion gas limit. So if we do 12 billion divided by where we started at 30 million, right, we get a 400x increase. And we can probably push it further than that. So that's a 400x increase in scale. So obviously it's not going to be exactly 400x. There's going to be differences here, but just like think about what that does for capacity of the network. Right now, the Ethereum network does what? Like layer 1, I should say, does, I guess like 15, 20 TPS on a good day, right? That's nothing. You know where we're going? We're going 10,000 plus TPS on L1. And then couple that with Blob scaling and with PeerDAS and improvements to PeerDAS and beyond there, we're going to millions of TPS on the L2s. Right, and not just the Blob L2s, but also like the off-chain DA L2s. So I do think, with the advancements happening in ZK and the way the Ethereum protocol is being architected, there is a real chance we can get to 100,000 TPS on L1, which is just disgusting when you think about it, and disgusting in a good way, where today we're at like 20, and in, let's say, 5 years or less, like I'm just saying 5 years because it's probably going to take a while for this to roll out, but let's just say 5 years or less, maybe like 3 years, or 3 to 5 years. Let's just give that estimate. It's always hard to estimate these things, but let's say 3 to 5 years, maybe even less than that, given the progress that's happening right now. But let's just say that for now, we could be at 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 TPS, when today we're at 20. At 10,000 TPS, guys, that is a 500x increase, right, to what we are today, if we're saying we do 20 TPS today. And the real cherry on top here is that we would do this without sacrificing Ethereum's decentralization at all. We're not doing what the other chains are doing. And this is something that was thought to be impossible. This is the trilemma that has been spoken about for a long time, that Vitalik wrote about all those years ago. And Ethereum may just be able to break that trilemma. And that's just L1. We still have the L2s. The L2s still serve a purpose, and a great important purpose, not just for scaling, but also for customizability, for different organizations to come in and say, I want to make my own chain, do it as an L2 on Ethereum. Ethereum gives me what I need, and away we go. Right? Privacy as well, big thing. Obviously, Aztec is getting a lot of attention recently because they're doing a token sale. Right, their tech is real. Should disclose, I'm an investor in Aztec from like 4 years ago, in one of their funding rounds there. But their tech is real. It works. And honestly, I'm impressed by how much they're prioritizing decentralization as well, because their network only launched when they went to 500 sequences, which is really, really cool. Like that's insane when you think about it. But just all of this, from like a high level, taking all of this together, we really are in the scalability era of Ethereum. And I think I talked about this last year a lot in the refuel, where I said that 2025 and onwards is going to be the scalability era for Ethereum, the real one. Because we had the L2s go live before then, but I would say most of them were like proof of concepts. We still need a lot of them to move towards stage 2, but we're kind of getting to the point now, if you go to L2 Beat, you're seeing like which ones are obviously going to be dominant into the future. Like Arbitrum 1, definitely. Base, definitely. OP mainnet is still there. I think OP mainnet is going to keep losing market share, to be honest, because, I guess like Base has taken that in terms of like the OP ecosystem. But you also have newer L2s like LiDAR, which is just killing it right now. The fact that they're using blobs as a perp dex is crazy to me. Like they're killing it. They're doing, like from what I can tell, they're doing like they're doing better than the other perp dexes out there, like Hyperliquid and others out there. And this is as an L2, because as you guys know, Hyperliquid is an L1, so it's great to see that. And then there's other L2s that are still growing, like Starknet, Linnea, ZK Sync, and so on and so forth, which you can check out. But yeah, we've really gotten to the point now where I think we're seeing which ones work, which ones don't, where we're kind of, getting some key players, which is great. So yeah, from kind of like last year into this year, and I guess like for the next 5 years, it really is the great scalability era of Ethereum. And I really do think this is going to reflect in Ethereum market share, which, I mean, Ethereum already dominates market share. It's got like 10 times the TVL of the next L1, which I believe is Solana. And then it has like way more stable coins than any other chain, which is obviously important. Real world assets. It has more, I guess, like organizations, companies, enterprises building on Ethereum than any other chain out there. And that's going to continue, of course. But then we've got like the scaling that's happening. But then I do really think this is going to reflect in the price. I know that this year has been like a pretty, I guess like it's a pretty big yo-yo for ETH this year, right? If you see what ETH started the year at, I'm going to bring up a chart on my other screen here. You won't be able to see it, but like the yo-yo that ETH has gone through this year has been quite insane. So if you say at the start of the year, if you look at the chart here, I'm just looking at it here, we started at 3,400. We went down to 1,400, right? Like you guys will remember that period, right? The first kind of 3-4 months of 2025 were not fun for Ethereans. Then from there, we went right the back up to like 5K, technically a new all-time high in August. And now since then, obviously we've come back down and we bottomed at around 2,600. Well, so far we've bottomed at about 2,600. We'll see if that really is the bottom, right? But it looks like the market wants to go up. I don't know. But as I said, like I think longer term, I really do think this is going to start reflecting in the price. Because if there's one thing that you can point to Ethereum doing is shipping regularly and shipping upgrades that actually improve the network in a substantial way. And I think it was just a coincidence because we launched Pectra in April and that's when ETH bottomed this year. I think that was a coincidence. And it may be another coincidence now where we're launching Fusaka and maybe the ETH price bottoms where it is now, but I do still believe that ETH is so heavily undervalued. I do believe that it's a beach ball underwater. I do think that there's obviously been like a lot of selling to drive ETH down in price, especially because, there's been a lot of buying, so there must be a lot of selling to offset that because the DATs like Tom Lee, for example, still buying a lot of ETH. But I think that, I've said this before, where essentially we're in a period where a lot of like the OG investors of both Bitcoin and ETH are offloading a lot of ETH. And I know this from speaking to friends as well. They've been in it for a long time. Some of them 10 years, right? Some of them since the ICO. And they're thinking to themselves, well, this is a good time to be offloading, right? Like, they're not bearish on ETH, but like, hey, they've made so much money, they're taking some off the table. And there's these obviously like big players that are happy to buy this ETH off them, so why wouldn't they take that opportunity? The same is true for Bitcoin as well. We've seen this. We've seen like a lot of ancient wallets wake up and start selling these assets. But I don't think that's bearish for these assets. I think that's a natural kind of course of things where as long as you have new buyers stepping in, even if the price goes down temporarily, as long as you have new sets of buyers stepping in, long term, it should be net positive for the price. And we do. We have new sets of buyers. We have the ETFs, right? We have the DAT companies. I know some of them have sold some of their ETH recently in order to do like share buybacks. They're the smaller ones. Like I don't actually think that's that big of a deal. I think that the two biggest, Bitmine and Sharplink, I don't think they're going to be selling any ETH. And Sharplink is actually going to be providing a lot more value to Ethereum because they're using their ETH within it, obviously closely tied to Consensus and Linnea. And Bitmine is staking all of their ETH as well. Or sorry, Sharplink is staking all of their ETH. Bitmine plans to. So when you do that, you're not planning to sell ETH here. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, it's been a healthy churn of like OG investors in ETH and BTC to newer investors. And I think that churn at this point is mostly over. I think that, if you've wanted to sell, you've sold this year. And I think that at the risk of kind of like cursing it, and then we go down further from here, I do feel very optimistic about he's finding more and more new sets of buyers, and also these new sets of buyers buying based on fundamentals, actually seeing the fact that yes, Ethereum has shipped, yes, it keeps growing, Ethereum is where all the activity is happening, and scaling is really not an issue anymore. We know how we're going to scale, and we're doing it. We're doing it in various different ways, from blobs to gas limit increases to ZK to L2s doing their own stuff. Like there's tons happening on the scaling front here, guys. So yeah, I do think that going forward, that's going to be positive for price as well. But in saying all of that, non-investment advice as per usual, right? You should take profits when you need to take profits for yourself. You should always worry about yourself there. And you should not be kind of like buying and selling ETH based on anything that I say on the show. I've always said that to you guys. I'm a perma bull. Perma bulls and perma bears, it's the same thing. Like we're going to be wrong sometimes and right other times. I personally don't play the market no matter what it is, whether it's ETH or other assets. I don't care about playing the market. And I take profits when, honestly, a lot of the time when I've taken profits, it's because I think something's overvalued. I mean, as you guys know, I haven't sold ETH, but like other things that I've sold, I thought they were overvalued. I think a lot of alts honestly are overvalued. I think a lot of them shouldn't be worth what they're worth. I think a lot of them end up opening, like when they first start trading, opening at a ridiculous market cap, and then that has to come down over time. And there are bargains out there. If you're a risk taker, there's plenty of bargains out there. I'm not going to tell you what those bargains are. You have to find that out for yourself, as per usual. Not going to give investment advice, but there are, and I think there's still opportunity to be had. And I know that this year's been quite funny because stocks have gone nuts, gold went nuts, and it sucked a lot of the capital out of crypto. But just like in any market, cycles, right? It's all cycles. And I'm not talking about the 4-year cycle. I'm talking about market cycles generally. Things work in cycles. So if the AI stuff cools down, if gold cools down, if stocks cool down generally, then maybe crypto becomes appealing again, because you look at crypto and you think, wow, crypto hasn't really done much. There's all these assets that are like on the floor. Maybe I'll scoop them up and take, and I'm happy kind of buying these things. I'm happy taking this risk because I feel like I'm buying at a discount or at bargain prices. I don't feel like I'm buying into a bubble, because obviously right now crypto is definitely not in a bubble. Like if anyone's telling you that crypto's in a bubble, they're insane, right? But then obviously there's the other side of things where people think that 2026 is going to be a bearish year, 4-year cycle, all that. I'm not going to guarantee that that won't happen, but you guys know my view on the 4-year cycle. You know that I don't believe in that stuff anymore. And you know that I definitely think that with these new sets of buyers coming in, they're going to be more fundamental sensitive than the traditional buyers that we had. Because retail definitely doesn't really care much about fundamentals for the most part. They definitely are the more DJing crowd. They're not here, guys, right now. Like they're not here and they haven't been here for a while. So I do think that these institutional buyers, these kind of like more TradFi buyers, yes, there's some DJing in them. Yes, some of them are stupid, right? But for the most part, I think they're more sophisticated buyers. So that's all going to be great there. But anyway, enough on the markets. Last few things to get through for today's episode. So this is the ZK stuff that I was talking about. I basically tweeted out the ETH Proofs website and I said, I don't think people are ready for what's happening with ZK, and they're not ready for Ethereum to outscale every other chain while still being the most decentralized network on the planet. That's the key here. We don't just want to outscale every other chain. We want to do it while maintaining Ethereum's core, most important property, which is decentralization. Like I think like that is the most important property. And I think if you were to just drill down a little bit into that, and I guess like what is kind of like the yin to decentralization's yang is censorship resistance. They go hand in hand. So as long as we can keep Ethereum censorship resistant because we've kept Ethereum decentralized, and then we can scale this to the world, we win. We win. In every timeline you look at, we win. I know it's taken a long time to get here, but that's what happens when you try to preserve decentralization. You can't take shortcuts. You have to take the long road. And I'm glad that we did, because now Ethereum is in a phenomenal position to capture that. And we also have the L2s, which capture that even more. Like, it's just crazy. Like I guess like the foresight that the Ethereum researchers and developers have had has really paid off in a big way here. All right, so the ethPandaOps team introduced a new website called The Lab. Now, I think they had like a similar thing to this, I guess like a few months ago, but this is a new website that they've kind of put out there, which allows you to keep track of the current, I guess, status of the network. Now, what's really cool about this is that, as you can see on my screen here, you can see what's happening on the network per slot. So I guess like as you guys know, because I've talked about this before, a slot on Ethereum is 12 seconds. And in that slot, there's a bunch of different things happening. So a block is kind of like built within that slot. 4 seconds of those 12 seconds is that, and then attestations come in from the 4-second mark to the 8-second mark, and then everything's aggregated from the 8 to 12-second mark, and then a slot is proposed on the network by a validator here. Now you can see this happening in real time. You can see the block coming in, right? And then there's attestations coming in, and then there's aggregations coming in from there, and then the slot is proposed here. Now I believe some of this stuff happens in parallel as well. It's not like they're just kind of like strictly on those kind of 4-second intervals there, but you can see it all happening in real time here. And then you can see the laggards coming in, the laggard attesters coming in. It's probably my Rock 5B node just attesting really late, by the way, because that thing's so underpowered now. But that's kind of like what you can see on this page. Now you can go to the different kind of pages here. You can see per epic what's happening. You can see per slot what's happening. You can see the entities on the network here. So you can see entities broken down by like, Binance, Solo Stakers, Unknown, EtherFi, Coinbase, and see how many validators they have. They probably have more than this, but this is just what the lab is seeing. And then you can see information about the forks on Ethereum. So this is the next upgrade. This is just for the consensus layer, by the way, guys. As you guys know, the names of forks are amalgamations of the consensus layer upgrade name and the execution layer upgrade name. The consensus layer upgrade name is Fulu, and that's why it's like Fusaka, because the execution layer one is Osaka, I believe. So it like becomes Fusaka. So Fulu is the next upgrade going live. As you can see, there's a countdown here in 7 days, 19 hours, and 38 minutes. I don't know if I'm actually going to be on the Fusaka live stream now that I think about it, because there is a Fusaka live stream happening, but I don't know if that's going to be happening when I'm asleep. I'm going to Google this quickly so I can see Fusaka live stream. No, I'm not getting any kind of results here in a time that I know. It's 8 p.m. UTC. So what's the current UTC for me? It's 12:11 a.m. 12 hours. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be on that live stream. I may be if I'm doing the time conversion right, but there will be a live stream for that there. But yeah, so there's that page there, and then there's contributors page, geographical checklist, so on and so forth. So you can see who's contributing publicly. You can run this. You can run Contributor, which is the software, alongside your beacon node to share valuable network data, which you can do on this page. And there's a bunch of other stuff kind of here, like fork readiness and so on and so forth. So yeah, this isn't a full view of the network, by the way, guys. This is definitely, from my understanding, a view of the network based on who's contributing their data to this. Like I am part of this. I'm not going to dox my validators here or anything like that, but I am definitely part of this. But this is actually, and the reason why I bring this site up is not just because it's cool, but this is actually informing a lot of the decisions around core development. Because as I was talking about earlier, when upgrading the network in terms of like the gas limit and also the blobs, especially, we always need to know, okay, like how much can we push this thing before the network starts becoming unstable? And that's what the lab is trying to do here. At least one of their roles is essentially tell the core developers, hey, this is safe to do based on the data that we're seeing, because it's not going to kill the network if you do it this way. And this is very valuable. We've not had something like this for, I guess, like majority of Ethereum's life. And this means that we can keep making data-informed decisions on the gas limit, on the on the blob increases, so that we can scale while not compromising any decentralization, but also scale while not hurting the network, because that's always a risk, right? That's always something core developers worried about, and that's why the gas limit stayed at 30 million for so long. I think we were there for like 3 or 4 years before we started upgrading, is because we just didn't have good data on what was happening here. And the core devs would basically default to being extremely conservative, which is actually like a fine default to have, because that's what you want. But in saying that, we want to be able to scale the network, we want to be able to improve the network while also preserving decentralization, while also preserving that 100% uptime that Ethereum has, because that is very important, especially for institutions. So yeah, anyway, you can go check out this website for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, last up here was a big announcement out of Devconnect. So as you guys know, interoperability is one of the core roadmap items of Ethereum that the EF is spearheading here. So number one is scale L1, number two is scale the blobs, number three is fix the user experience of Ethereum, which includes interoperability. Now, what was announced at Devconnect was something called the Ethereum interoperability layer, which has the goals of making Ethereum feel like one chain. So you have one-click swap across the different L2s, use funds from anywhere, no bridges, no network switching, same security and censorship resistance. Now, there's not too much information on this just yet, but this is an effort that's being spearheaded by the EF, which is really important because the EF works as a really nice selling point. So if this becomes the, I guess, like default interoperability layer, which is going to be a public good, it's not going to be, it's not going to have a token on or anything like that because the EF is doing it, then this will solve the interoperability issues in a really elegant way. So I will keep an eye on this. I'll keep you guys updated on this. If you have more information about this that maybe I've missed, feel free to share it in the Daily Gwei Discord channel. But yeah, I thought that was just worth bringing up with you guys because that's the last thing, I think. Besides scale, the last thing is to kind of, I guess, make sure that it all feels like one Ethereum chain between the different L2s and Ethereum L1. If we can fix that, then we win even harder. Like, I think that's the last kind of barrier there in terms of like a UX kind of thing or a major UX thing. Obviously, there's other UX barriers, but that's a major one. And if we can fix that, then we're on a really nice track there. But yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it for all of the Ethereum-related news. Now, I did tease earlier that I'm going to reveal what my special project is, and I said I was going to reveal this when I was like 80% done with it, but I'm about 50% done with it right now. So yeah, first a little bit of context. I'm gonna keep you guys hanging for just another minute here. So a little bit of context. I was saying earlier about how I've kind of used this year to get my kind of, I guess, like life, maybe not like back on track, but like in order, so to speak. So where I feel a lot more comfortable, stop burning myself out, and feel a lot better about myself. Now that started with my fitness kind of routine, which has been amazing this year, and I talked about that at length on the last refuel episode. You can go check that out if you want. I'm not going to rehash it here, but you know, as some of you are aware, because I mentioned it last time, I do that in the morning. So my mornings are dedicated now to fitness. I'll get up, I'll check some things on you know, Twitter, on Discord while eating my breakfast. Then I'll do my fitness routine, which goes into lunch, and then after lunch, I'll work on my kind of new project here. So my new project is taking up my afternoons. So I guess like I work for maybe like 3-4 hours on it a day. It's taking up my afternoons. And then my night is basically like free to do whatever I want. Spend time with the fiance, obviously have dinner, maybe do some more Ethereum related stuff, maybe record a refuel at night or something like that. Going forward, obviously in the new year, I'll be doing them every week. So on the Monday, I may do it in the afternoon, I may do it at night, I don't know. But that's like the three main things I'm focusing on right now in my life. And it's been really great because for a long time, I was suffering from a lack of kind of purpose. You know, Ethereum is and educating in Daily Gwei is definitely a purpose for me, but I feel like I've kind of conquered it. I feel like I've spent so long in this industry, I've kind of done everything that I wanted to do in this industry, and now I'm in like maintenance mode. And maintenance mode for me means that I'm doing the Daily Gwei, I'm spending time kind of keeping on top of things, I'm spending time in the Discord channel with you guys, talking to you, and just like generally keeping up to date with things, but not trying to like go to the next level, because I feel like for me, there is no next level. I'm pretty much content with where I am with Ethereum. But with that brings kind of, I guess, like the question of what am I going to do next? And that's what I've been kind of, I guess, dealing with for years now. I would say at least the better part of 3 years, I've been dealing with this, I guess, like dread, you could call it, of am I going to do anything else? Am I going to find anything else that captures my attention like Ethereum did? Is there something else that I can challenge myself with? Fitness has become one of those things, which has been great, but I needed something more than that. I needed something for my brain. Like fitness is definitely like physical, obviously mostly physical. It does have a mental component to it, but it's mostly physical. And that, I feel like I'm on a really great track there. I'm not anywhere near like, I guess like what you would call maintenance in fitness yet, but I'm on a really good track to getting to what my goals are. And I've discussed these goals before. I want to be, at least 15% body fat. I want to look really kind of athletic, really kind of, I guess like ripped for a better word, right? Grow my muscles, things like that. So that's what I'm kind of going towards. And I think I can achieve that within the next year because I've been really strict with it. And I'm in a really good routine. I have the time to dedicate to it. But there was still that last thing missing that I felt was missing. I felt that piece was missing for a long time. And I figured out kind of what that was going to be a few months ago, but I didn't start on the project until a month ago. So what this project is, and here's the grand reveal, right? I've kept you guys hanging for long enough. It's something completely different to crypto. It's something, as I said, that none of you guessed in the Discord channel, which is funny because I like seeing all the guesses. But what it is I'm writing a fiction novel. So yeah, that's what it is. I'm writing a fiction novel, a story. I've wanted to write this for quite a while now. I actually had the idea for the story a while ago, but I know nothing about writing, right? Like I don't know anything about writing a fiction novel. I have written non-fiction things a lot, obviously with my newsletters that I used to do for the Daily Gwei newsletter, but on Twitter, I write a lot of posts and things like that. I mean, I write a lot, right? But it's all non-fiction. It's all just very casual. Whereas writing fiction is a completely different ballgame. I start from zero and I have to teach myself everything. And what I'm writing is not fantasy. Fantasy is, I would say, the hardest genre to write. So definitely if you go into fantasy as a first-time writer, I wouldn't say you're setting yourself up for failure, but you're setting yourself up for a really hard time. So my story is, I would say, closest to sci-fi. It's not like hard sci-fi or anything like that. There's no aliens, but it's closest to sci-fi. And I'm not going to tell you guys what it is because honestly, I'm like 50% through the first draft. That's what I mean by like being halfway through or 50% through what I want here. And the first draft I wouldn't let anyone read. It's pretty bad in terms of like there's plot holes everywhere because I keep thinking of new story items to add as I keep writing. And the grammar is like terrible because I don't really care about that. Like getting the first draft out is all about just getting the bare bones kind of thing on paper. And that's what I've done. So I'm aiming for 100,000 words, which is the average length of a novel. I'm at about 50,000 words today. And I want to get this done by Christmas because it's quite easy for me to write this because I if I can average 2,000 or a bit more than that words per day until Christmas for the next 30 days, I will get to 100,000 words. And I've been able to average that, honestly. Some days I'll write less than others. It was funny, on the plane to Devconnect, I ended up writing 6,000 words, so that's 3 days worth. But while I was at Devconnect, I wasn't really writing anything because I didn't have the time to. So you can see how the average moves there. But as long as I can average 2,000 a day, I think I'll hit that milestone by Christmas. And that's a deadline that I've put in for myself. And that's only the first draft. Because then for the second draft, I have to go back and obviously edit everything, fix the plot holes, so on and so forth. But that's what I've been focused on. And that's my new project there, guys. But I'm not ready to share any details about the story. I did share some of them with people that I spoke to at Devconnect, but if I share too much, it like ends up spoiling it. And I don't want to spoil the story because it's, in my opinion, a really cool story. There's a lot of mystery to it, and saying really anything about it ends up spoiling something, or because it's just me saying it, right? Like it's hard for me to describe my story without spoiling things. But that's what I've been working on there, and it honestly feels amazing. I feel the most excited about this that I've felt in a long time about anything, really. It's really working my brain. It's making me think. As I said, I'm starting from zero, so I have to learn everything myself. It feels awesome learning something completely new that I have no experience in at all. And it really does feel like that thing that I've been searching for the last 3 years, to focus my attention and energy on something new. And it feels great. And that's why I've been saying that I am in a really good place now. And I'm in such a good place that I feel like bringing the refuel back to regular cadences. I feel like I'm leading a fulfilling life at this point. And I'm really excited, honestly, for you guys to eventually read my book. I don't even care. Like I'm not writing this to make money or anything. Like I'm writing this as like at this point, it's a hobby. But eventually, I want to get this down because it's a story that I wanted to tell. It's a story that I think is pretty cool, and I'm excited for people to read it. And even if people think it's bad, I don't care. Like it's like obviously my first kind of novel, but just getting it finished and eventually publishing it would be a huge milestone for me. So I'm excited to do that. But as I said, only halfway through the first draft. It's going to be a long time before this thing gets published, but I wanted to kind of put it out there that that's what I've been working on. If any of you maybe have worked on something similar in the past, I'd love to discuss this in the Daily Gwei Discord channel with you. But yeah, just I guess reflecting on the last, I would say I've been writing it for the last like 6 weeks at this point. Actually, like I've written a lot in 6 weeks because I've just been super motivated to get down and write it. But in terms of like being able to learn how to write, it's been a roller coaster because I do this thing where I'll read my own writing and I'll be like, you know what, that's not bad, it's decent. And then I'll do this stupid thing of like I'll go and read a published book and I'll read through it and I'll be like, wow, this is amazing. and then I'll compare it to my writing, which is the dumbest thing to do because I'm reading my first draft, mind you, of someone who's never written fiction before, right? So obviously it's not going to be anything like what a professional published kind of author's work is going to be like. So I'm basically comparing myself as an amateur to a professional. That'd be like an amateur kind of basketball player comparing themselves to Michael Jordan or LeBron James or other kind of, I guess, like famous basketball players or anyone. Like it'd be like an amateur at school running a 100-meter race comparing himself to Usain Bolt, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, I have to stop myself from doing that sometimes. But I also want to keep reading because it teaches me things. It shows me how other writers have been able to kind of get around problems that I run into and write things that are compelling and that don't bore people, because writing is definitely it's a very complex art to it. I've discovered very quickly. It may sound really good in your head, and then you put it down on paper, and you're like, wow, that's bad. Like that's bad and boring, and like how is it so bad? Like why did it sound so good in my head, and now it sounds so bad on paper? Right? Or it reads so bad on paper. And because it's an art, it's like, imagine it's like any kind of art, right? Imagine you think of an image in your head and you're like, wow, that's really cool. I want to draw that. And then you go to draw it and your drawing is just absolutely horrendous. I'm sure everyone has done this at some point in their lives. I know I have. It's the same thing where what sounds good in your head normally does not translate well on the first draft anyway, on paper. And that's what I'm kind of doing right now. I'm just trying to get through the first draft. I have the structure of the story. I already know what the story is going to be. I already know most of it. Like there are things that I'm adding as I go, but I know like where I want to end the book. Like I actually came up with the ending first. So I know where I want to end it, and it's just working towards that. But it's been fun, guys. It's been really interesting, and it's really different to anything I've done in the past. So I'm excited to keep going with it. And yeah, maybe I'll let you guys know when I finish the first draft. Maybe that will be the next update. Because as I said, I want to finish it by Christmas. This is the last refuel until the new year. So yeah, maybe this keeps me accountable. Maybe by on 5th of January, which will be the next episode, I'll be like, hey guys, I finished my first draft and it wasn't so bad after all. So we'll see. But yeah, that's my secret project. That's what I've been working on. Not so secret anymore. But going forward, those are the 3 things in my life that I'm going to be focusing on, right? My fitness, writing my story, writing my novel, and obviously the Daily Gwei and everything Ethereum. So I guess on that note, I've gone over an hour again here, but those are going to be the episodes going forward. There'll be an hour or more going forward here. But I'm going to wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that. I hope you have a good holiday ahead of you. I'm actually going to be on the Bankless roll-up this week as well, so you'll see that Friday. I'm filling in for David because he's climbing another mountain. I'll be on with Ryan, and then I maybe will be on the Fusaka live stream. But you guys may see me on those things there, but until the new year, until we go back to a weekly cadence, that's going to be it for now. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all in the new year. Thanks everyone.